Hey, things are not what you think.
Yeah, there's always something you don't know.
Welcome to Joey's Real Talk.
老外大声说。
So what are we talking about today? 2 weeks ago, the CEO of PX Mart, is that what it is? Okay. 全联福利中心. Now, this is actually the company with, I would argue, pretty good marketing schemes. I love their commercials. So they are clearly in tune with what the younger generation needs when it comes to marketing. Anyway, the CEO of PX Mart, Xu Chongren, as he was taking a press conference a couple of weeks ago, said that young people these days, they're too wasteful. They spend too much money. And this blew up as a piece of social news on the internet. A lot of people debate over it. A lot of people make criticisms and point fingers at him. And then a couple of days later, he, using the PX Mart's Facebook to apologize. And a lot of people were still kind of trolling him a little bit and saying, okay, so does that mean your employees are going to get a raise now? So we thought maybe we will talk about this, talk about generation gap, talk about what the older generations think of the millennials, quote unquote, and the generation X, Y, Z.
And we also want to hear what you have to say, so make sure you get onto our Facebook Live and you can leave your comments there. Speaking of leaving comments, I'm so excited because I'm trying not to fangirl. But Wang Dawen, just let's mention.
Oh, okay. What's up, Dawen? Good to have you here with us.
And he says, what up, Joey, Nancy, and Philip? It is the 千禧时代, as they've been saying for years. Get off my lawn. Anyways, the struggle is real, folks.
Okay, is Dawen considered to be Generation X, Y, or Z? Like, what are the Generation X, Y, Z eras?
Well, if they're all falling under the category of millennials, then generally it's categorized as people born between 1980s to 1999.
Okay.
Or early 2000s. That's the millennial.
Early 2000s, yeah.
Basically, they differ by about 5 to 10 years each, X, Y, and Z, right? And I certainly am the youngest one of the bunch, of course.
Oh, really?
Anyway, we did rally up 4 different interviewees. We'll be playing snippets of their opinion pieces and contribution to our topics today. Without saying their names, as by tradition, we will cover, however, their age, the country of their origin, what industry they work in, because that is relevant for this topic, what position they hold in the office, and whether it's a Taiwanese or foreign company. So we have 4. One is 30-year-old from Canada, works in the oil and gas industry, a little bit of trading. This person's a manager and works for a Taiwanese company. Second interviewee, 28-year-old from Japan, works in the heavy industry, traditional manufacturing, is a international sales representative and works for a Taiwanese company. Thirdly, 27-year-old from Singapore, works in media and works for a Singaporean company. And finally, 36-year-old from the US of A, works in the aluminum, die casting and machining industry and is an international sales manager, works for a Taiwanese company. So that's our sample. That's our batch today. But of course, you, our dear listeners and our dear Facebook Live participants, you're from all sorts of different countries doing all sorts of jobs, and we love to hear your pieces as well. Okay, so the first question we asked them, clearly I shouldn't be in the media industry.
Just play the clip.
Okay, yeah, okay. The first question is, many Taiwanese employers from the baby boomer era tend to criticize their Generation X, Y, Z employees as being lazy, spoiled, entitled, or wasteful. What do you think? And let's find out what they actually think about this question.
Taiwan employers even have a term for that. They call them strawberry or 草莓, which means easy to be squished or bruised. There are people like that, but you really have to look at different people. So it really depends on person to person.
In my particular case, I'm from Generation Y, and I'm not like that at all. I have always been very focused, but I do agree with what Taiwanese employers think of their local employees. I see a lot of employees here in Taiwan. They are not very focused about what they're doing. They don't really know what they want. They're doing jobs just while they figure things out. And I don't think employers want to see that in their employees. They want a higher level of devotion.
In my personal opinion, I do not agree that the Generation X, Y, Z employees are being lazy, spoiled, entitled, or wasteful in any ways that they think are negative, because everyone has their own kind of perception towards the things that they desire and the things that they're going after. So it's just the approach that is very different from the previous generations of humankind. So I guess that's a very subjective perspective coming from the older generation.
I don't think young people are lazy or spoiled at all. So if you're just given 30K or even less, I don't think anyone wants to work hard. It's true that the living cost here is a lot cheaper, but if I convert expenses and pay in Tokyo into those in Taiwan, fresh graduates should be given at least 40K in Taipei. And I rather think employers are lazy because they have to think how to motivate employees, create better business schemes to sell for higher prices, rather than thinking about saving costs only. You can't think because you're a big boss, so you should be entitled for good employees. So in my opinion, like, Taiwanese employers are not doing their job.
Okay. Now, in terms of that last one, that's a point we want to come back to. It's not easy to be an employer. It shouldn't be easy to be a boss. And so there are things that is expected of employers that we should hold them to those expectations. But today, I really want to ask our listeners to try to be as subjective as you can, hear different sides of the story, and remove yourselves. Because a lot of times, when I myself hear someone accusing me of being a millennial, I get pretty ticked off right away. So let's talk about this subjectively as we can, starting with the human cultural revolution took a major leap after the 70s, and there are things that employers that are 40, 50 or beyond simply haven't caught on to. I mean, for crying out loud, our grandparents went to wars, right? And I'm sure they told our parents at some point during their upbringing, like, you're not tough enough.
You have it so easy now, et cetera, et cetera.
And so our parents, of course, would pass that down to us. But with internet, it seems like there are a lot of things that is changing so drastically that we can't just paint the whole millennials with a broad brush. Now, with that said, what did you guys think about what our interviewees mentioned?
Well, I just want to also mention what Derek, I'm assuming Derek, as Philip has pointed out, he's commenting on our Facebook Live, and he's saying why this generation always spends so much time to make money. I think he means like the millennials. But after all, we can't afford to buy anything. That's his feeling.
Especially housing here in Taiwan. Yeah.
I think, he's kind of hit on the main issue is the fact that things are so expensive now, but salaries are so low. For example, when my parents were going to school, for that whole generation, not my parents specifically, you could work, like a part-time job or, something on the weekends, and you'd pay off all of your university fees. You'd graduate with no debt. You'd have a good job promised for you. You could start working on a family. You could buy property. None of that is working for our generation. For me, myself, I'm lucky having this job. I've got a job. It's stable. But I'm not even going to be able to think about property until I'm 35 because I'm still paying off, student loans and things.
That's true. And I'm not ashamed to say this, I just paid off the last lump sum of my student loan. And the worst thing that can happen, thank you. The worst thing that can happen to you is working in Taiwan, making an earning in NTD and having to pay off your debt
Canadian
in
dollars.
CND.
Yes.
All right, so it took me quite a while.
I'm with you.
Okay, so that of course is the first question. The second question we want to understand is whether or not you sense a severe generation gap, and how does it compare to the sentiments in your own country of origin? And I want to find out that maybe there are some just different expectations for success in different generations, and perhaps that's what it is. So once again, let's listen to our interviewees and see what they have to say on this particular subject.
You always want to have better pay and have less responsibility or have an easier job. This is true for people today. It was true 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Everyone has these kinds of tendencies. Again, I think it really depends on different people. What I mean is you can find one person in one generation who's more responsible, and you can also find someone in the same generation who isn't responsible or who doesn't do well. So it really varies from person to person and their type of thinking. And this is not really contingent on age, but more maturity.
In Taiwan, I do sense there's a severe generation gap between owners of businesses, people who are running or own businesses, and the younger generations. Mostly because I think younger generations, they keep looking for something else. I think in Taiwan, younger generations as not as mature professionally. I think in other countries, people are more loyal, and they have goals. There are clearer goals.
I would say that the generation gap, so to speak, is dramatic. I mean, you're either working with a baby boomer, somebody who's about to, just about to retire, or you're working with somebody green as grass who's, just getting into the industry, and it's hard to get a lot of stuff done. A lot of work has to go through these, the guys that are just about to retire and get out of the industry, and they're the ones with all the knowledge and know-how for everything. So.
Okay, so devotion, loyalty, whether or not you are actually a valuable member in your company or in society, I think that tends to be what people want to talk about regarding this topic. But also, the last person seemed to hit a note that I want to expand on. The know-how is very important, because company or, empires, that's something that stretches beyond just one lifetime. So we have to make sure that the generation to follow is also up to par with the know-hows. And if know-hows get lost somewhere along the way, then that's a terrible thing for a company, right?
Right. So I feel like it's kind of counterproductive to be labeling or trying to apply a label or an adjective to describe a whole generation of people, both for millennials and for the older generation. Like, why are we trying to say that they're this, and why are they trying to say that we're that? It doesn't solve the problem, and it creates a bigger divide between both sides. So I think part of what you're saying is it's in both parties' interest to create a better work environment and a better career path for millennials, because older people, the older generation, want talented individuals, talented young individuals in their company, and young individuals want better jobs.
And to pay their pensions.
If
we don't have good jobs, how do we pay your pensions?
Right, exactly. So why don't we just work towards that common interest?
We need to focus on the situation around all of us. I mean, this economy isn't it's affecting us most right now as the millennials, because we're struggling to find a foothold.
But eventually,
it will affect everybody when they get, when they need to retire.
Right.
That's true.
Or pass on the company.
So as a leader, as an employer, your job should be to
cultivate us.
To nurture, to hold the hands of the quote unquote millennials and make sure that they can continue to run this company in the future. Albeit maybe it's a lot harder now, because there, after all, is a big generation gap in the last 20 years because of a technology.
It seems they're not as willing to take a risk with these people. Like that video that I mentioned earlier, you can find it on YouTube somewhere. It was here in Taiwan. They got a bunch of CEOs, and they showed them resumes without showing them their names, and asked them if they would hire these people. And they said no to almost every single one of them. And later they found out it was their own resume when they were younger, or it was the resume of their daughter or their son or other already famous people. So they're saying that, these people, either they had the right qualifications but no experience, or they had experience but no qualifications. And I mean, you can't really get both. You got to take a chance on somebody.
Just to play the devil's advocate, to be honest, if I saw my resume, I wouldn't
That's
hire
you speaking from knowing yourself.
Right
at
now,
ICRT. But maybe there are people who don't show how they excel in resumes, but they're willing to work.
Exactly.
Right? So those are the pockets of demographics that we really have to think about. All right, it's time for us to take a short break. We'll come back with the rest of our questions and our interviewees' pieces. But in the meantime, maybe you are from other countries around the world and there's something you like to share. Maybe you are also from, I don't know, like today we have someone from Singapore, Japan, Canada, and America. Maybe you disagree with what our interviewees say. Please share that with us on our Facebook Live comments. We'll take a short break, be right back with today's Real Talk on ICRT.
And now we begin our exciting...
That's 200.
Well, that one commented again.
You mean a third time or second time?
Second time.
Why are you gawking over?
No.
Hi.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so please do share your thoughts with us. 不管你觉得现在的老板是不是很刁钻啊，或者是你真的觉得可能年轻人现在的工作能力或工作态度不像以往，那么来跟我们分享一下，在我们的这个 comment 直接打下。然后如果说我们觉得你 comment 可以 share 的话，我们就在空中跟我们的听众一起分享。
So Yo Ming Liu says, before we even have a term for young generation who don't agree with this low salary norm called rotten strawberries, did we call somebody like
I don't think so.
Oh.
Did we? Who calls them the 烂草莓？
烂草莓。
我们被叫烂草莓。
我以为我们只是草莓，我们已经烂掉了，是不是？
已经烂草莓了吗 ？He says, yeah. Oh, that's depressing.
跟他说让他破200。
OK， 好，等一下 ，I have a lot to do here. I can't multitask. Not a lot of men can.
Nancy 或 Philip
要讲什么？
说这样观看人数破200，现在快破200了。
189。
Share this post.
Share
the post.
Oh, okay. 现在讲。
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, wait till tomorrow.
I can't even single task.
Why are you so lazy, you millennial?
I'm a rotten strawberry. So, if you really enjoy the topic and you really care about what we're talking about, please share this post.
We need to break 200.
Yay! Somebody says hi, Philip.
Hi.
Whoa, why just Philip?
Hey.
What about S? We're people
Hey.
too.
Hello, Evan. His friend from Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
A fellow
fine.
Canadian.
He could tell
Fine.
us what it's like in Vancouver.
Yeah, what's going on in Vancouver?
Is he working there right now?
He is working there.
There you go.
好，我们现在观看人数有快要破200，对不对？
现在180左右。
Okay, let's make it over 200. 然后希望大家可以多分享我们的 Facebook Live， 让大家都可以听到我们今天讨论的话题。Again, 老外大声说 today as we look at generation gap here in Taiwan, and we're just waiting for the commercial.
How much more?
We have yeah, this is a long commercial.
Evan says it's expensive.
Yeah.
In Vancouver.
No, it's not changed.
Yeah.
No, yeah, nothing has changed. And especially if you want to eat well in Vancouver, if you want to go
Actually,
to what?
He posted something just earlier today I saw, and it's there's an article of how people were lining up for over an hour just to get to see an apartment, a single room apartment in Vancouver. That's because it was one of the co-op ones, so it's like subsidized because no one can afford to live in that city.
Yeah, real estate in Vancouver is also on the rise. 温哥华，因为我们有些听众是温哥华的朋友们哦，然后我自己也在温哥华住过 ，You too。现在温哥华的这个房价基本上一栋不错的房子大概都是200-300万加币起跳。So it's not just Taiwan， 不是只有台湾或台北的房价现在攀高，所以说其实这个问题各国都有，所以我们今天才会想要网罗各国的这个朋友们的意见。那如果说你也是来自于不同国家，如果你听得懂中文的话，跟我们分享一下。So if you're from different countries around the world, you want to share regarding generation gap or regarding how millennials are perceived around the world, do share that with us on our Facebook. And also share this Facebook Live right here so we can spread the messages and have a discussion, an even broader and open discussion with everyone.
Jason Sunny is saying there are certain groups of people from certain countries are cooking up real estate. So driving up real estate prices in Vancouver, no surprise.
Yeah,
happening in
they're
Taiwan
saying
too.
certain countries.
Well,
They're being politically very politically correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Canadian will get paid more. Is that true?
Slightly.
I mean, we do, but we also have a lot more higher taxes and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, like if you're living in Vancouver, it's very, very hard to save money. Other parts of Canada is not so bad. Vancouver is just exceptionally expensive. Well, because no one wants to live.
Not yet.
Oh.
Don't.
Premature.
Faked us out. My sister lived in Saskatchewan for a while.
I feel sorry for her.
It was a nice place,
No,
but
I'm sure
it's
it's
very
nice
quiet.
place, yeah.
It's very quiet. How's that fun?
That's you.
All right, we're ready to get back to Facebook
yeah.
Live once again. Tune into ICRT FM 100.
We're good to go. Right back to the show. Back to the show. ICRT, where we've got it going on.
All right, welcome back. We're good to go. I hope you're ready to go as well. Right here on ICRT, the last hour of the midday show as we go through the Friday segment, Real Talk with Nancy and Philip. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so today's topic, in case you just joined us, is about generation gaps. It's about how the millennials, quote unquote, the generations X, Y, Z, are being perceived around the world, especially by, say, someone from the baby boomer era. And I realized I used the letter Z, which is, you know,
Canadian.
a Canadian thing to do. So shout out to all the Canadians out there. I can't shake that habit of mine.
Good.
Anyway, the
good
next
habit.
thing we asked all of our interviewees, which there are 4, one of them from Canada, one from Japan, one from Singapore, one from the USA. And this is the third question we asked them. We're going to take this piecemeal, so 2 by 2. Here's the question. Do generations X, Y, Z in your country of origin also feel like they're disadvantaged or constantly taken advantage of by their employers? And let's go ahead and find out what their answers are to that question. We'll take a look at the first 2, and then we'll talk about it first here on ICRT.
Well, I guess it's actually better for us in Singapore because there are laws, employment laws that will actually cover the employees, and it will actually show them from any unfair treatment. So in an environment that is, for example, abusive or unhealthy or negative, there are a lot of channels that we can actually attention to problems to, and it will be addressed. So I guess the younger generation being more vocal and more liberal, not many at times or not many chances are there that they are being taken advantage of. So I think all's good in Singapore. Well, the environment is pretty friendly and awesome.
Again, I come from Mexico. Yes, this is a general feeling. It's always it's a normal thing that younger people feel their older bosses, they're always taking advantage of them. But it's not as evident as it is in Taiwan. I think in Mexico, at least, people are still judged by a high percentage in your skills, in your aptitudes, in your devotion, in your loyalty. And of course, I mean, if you're younger, a lot of bosses pushes you around, but it's not as bad as in Taiwan.
You know, that last bit really surprised me. He made it clear that he's from Mexico, and he said that Taiwan is worse in terms of the millennials or younger people being taken advantage of by their employers.
So far, people from Singapore, both Singapore and Mexico, have said that they feel the situation in Taiwan is worse.
Yeah.
I wonder if we will fare better with Japan and the U.S.
You know, one thing that he also mentioned is loyalty. I think this is the 3rd time he mentioned that word, devotion and loyalty to the company. And I wonder if that is really what makes a difference here in Taiwan. Is the word loyalty something that Taiwan just can't fare very well with, or we don't?
And is loyalty and devotion rewarded in a company? I think that's the question.
I mean, it's a two-way street. If you don't give them an incentive to be loyal, they're not going to be loyal.
I think devotion and loyalty was definitely rewarded in the past generation when, you know, you spent your whole life at a company, possibly, and then you retired and then they paid your pension. But I think for younger people now, we're much more comfortable with the idea of moving from job to job and seeking out the best situation for ourselves. And we're more interested in, like, having a good work-life balance and having a sense of purpose.
Well, with that said, I think there are 2 ways to look at this. As once again, to play the devil's advocate, there are studies that said that young people cannot be expected to hold one job for the rest of their lives anymore. Now, is that one because the employers nowadays, they're not running their companies as well? Or it is because the economy is in such a flux that it's hard to actually hold a company for that many years?
Herbert Lin says on Facebook that young people should work hard, but if youngsters can bring out results, they should be rewarded. Expecting them to perform well but refusing to pay at the same time is just ridiculous.
I definitely agree with that. You can't argue with that one. Okay, so once again, we have another 2 interviewees who want to answer the same questions. Once again, I'll pose the question. Do generations X, Y, Z in your country of origin also feel like they're disadvantaged or constantly taken advantage of by their employers? Right here on ICRT. Let's listen to it.
In Japan, as you know, young people have to show respect to older people, and then sometimes it's very over the top. But, you know, it's just tiring, not affecting your future or life in the most of cases. So probably what's different in Japan is that we got a lot more big companies and public companies than in Taiwan. And employers also have to work for the stock owners, so they can't do whatever they want. And finally, I think what we should do here in Taiwan is to keep pointing out bad bosses, so people's reaction to Chenlian's boss is a good thing. And we got the internet today, so we should spread this and can make the voice louder.
I think both people in Taiwan and also people in America feel like they are being taken advantage of by their employers, or that their employers don't treat them fairly. I think it's much better to allow the employer and the employee to discuss what is acceptable for overtime, how much more that they get paid, and whether the person wants to work or not. If they don't want to work, then they don't have to work. If they want to work, then they should be paid for that difference. I think it's better to let the companies decide that rather than have the politicians decide that, this is the same rule and everybody should follow it, because it really varies from industry to industry and person to person.
Yeah, and company to company. I mean, it's hard for legislators, lawmakers to say, okay, this is one rule and it will fit all, of course. But how do you actually have that open debate with your bosses?
Well, I think what the last interviewee said, how, if the employers and employees just sat down and talked it all out, everything would be fine. I mean, that is a very idealistic point of view, because the employers have all the power here. I mean, especially when there's no unions. So, I mean, they're not going to willingly give up their power to their employees to make any decisions. Just like there's one notable CEO who said that 7 days off a year is too much. I mean,
he's coming from the perspective of the bottom line of the company, which makes sense in a business sense. Of course it does.
But it's still also somewhat short-sighted, because if you don't want to, if you don't want to have to keep retraining employees who are burning out because they're getting no time off and feeling like they have no greater purpose other than to be a cog in your machine, then, I mean, you're going to just keep on spending more money on employing these new people and training these new people.
Right. So instead, look at every, job applicant
as an investment.
As an investment, yeah. Someone that you want to work on for the next 10, 20 years.
Invest in their future, and they will invest in yours.
That should be a slogan. I think it is a slogan somewhere, right?
Slogan for me.
And of course, recently the labor laws had some amendments, and it's still hard for especially Taiwanese employees to get used to the new amendments. I mean, how do you actually become a whistleblower? Whistleblower? Why would you call it whistleblower when your company is not abiding by these, new amendments of the labor law? And you still have to work with the same boss after you've blown your whistle.
you might win and the law might be on your side, but then you got to go back to work and you got to face your employer.
Yeah, how do you work in that environment again?
And you'll probably lose your job, and if the end result is losing your job, then might as well just go. And why have to go through all that trouble? I think that's what a lot of people are going through right now. Well, I like to think that we found a solution to some of the answers we've been asking. I'm going to play this next bit for you guys, and so we're going to have our closing remark from each of the anchors, of course, Nancy and Philip. Now, this guy's name is Simon Sinek. He is a British-American author, motivational speaker, and marketing consultant. He's also authored 3 books in total. I think the first one started in 2009. Anyway, here's what he has to say about leadership, and especially leadership inside a company. Right here, let's give this one a listen.
There's an Aesop fable about 4 oxen that stand tail to tail. And whenever the lion tries to eat them, no matter what angle from which he attacks, he will always be met with horns. However, due to infighting and disagreements, they separate and they go and graze in different parts of the field. And one by one, the lion picks them off and kills them all. When we stand together, we can more easily face the dangers outside. When we break up inside our companies, if our leaders don't allow us a space to feel safe inside our own companies, to feel like we belong, then we're forced to exert our own energy to protect ourselves from each other. So we're constantly judging and assessing each other, who's alpha, right? And what we do is when we assess that someone else is the alpha, we voluntarily take a step back and allow them to eat first. Alphas get first choice of meat and first choice of mate. The rest of us may not get the best cut of meat, but we will get to eat eventually, and we won't get an elbow in the face. Good system. It's good to be the king, but it comes at a cost. You see, the group is not stupid. We're not giving all of that stuff away for free. You see, we expect that when danger threatens us from the outside, that the person who's actually stronger, the person who's better fed, we expect them to run towards the danger to protect us. This is what it means to be a leader. The cost of leadership is self-interest. If you're not willing to give up your perks when it matters, then you probably shouldn't get promoted. You don't get to do less work when you get more senior. You have to do more work. And the more work you have to do is put yourself at risk to look after others. That is the anthropological definition of what a leader is. This is why we're so offended by these banker boys who pay themselves astronomical salaries. It has nothing to do with the number. It's that we are deeply and viscerally offended that we know that we allowed them to have this alpha position and they did not fulfill their responsibility of the alpha. They're supposed to sacrifice themselves for us, never sacrifice us for themselves. This is why we're angry and offended and don't trust them. They fail.
Ooh, very impassionate speech. Once again, Simon Sinek, or Sinek, and that is about leadership. You know, it's about the mandate of leadership. Forget about corporate owners. I mean, even for emperors, your mandate does not come from the gods. It comes from the people that you rule, and you always have to take care of them instead of pointing fingers at them and calling them millennials and that they should be working harder and not being so wasteful. Closing remarks from the two of you guys?
Zenas? Sorry, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. She says, fun fact, this term was originally for the 1960s generation. I think he or she means millennials, which happens to be them using it on us now.
But millennials is like...
Millennials means
millennial.
2000.
Yeah,
like
so
1000, actually.
Baby boomers? I don't know.
I don't know what term she's referring to.
Maybe we used to call the 1,000 people millennials.
I doubt it.
I wonder if they're as lazy as we are now. Anyway, Philip?
This argument that he says, you know, about leaders, it's obviously true for all times. I mean, it's not something that's just going on now. But if you look at the statistics, I mean, if there's inequality.org, which is saying that over the past quarter of a century, only America's most affluent families have added to their net worth. So, I mean, it's clear now that if this wage gap is growing, then the leaders are just shirking their duties more and more and more. I mean, otherwise the gap should be shrinking and everybody should be getting better.
Right, and I would just like to propose as a hypothetical situation, if we created a business model based on Simon Sinek, and the story that he just told us, if we created a business model based on that, that would mean that potentially the top brass or the CEO or whoever, the leader of the company, would step down or take a pay cut or take a no pay if the company is not making any money.
Right.
Because they get the biggest piece of the meat. So if there is a shortage of food, then they hand out the meat and take care of the people beneath them, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because it's the opposite way around. When the company loses money.
At the very least, don't just scold them, basically. Don't just criticize your employees for not working hard enough. And I'm not surprised that, you know, the rich are getting richer because these conglomerates, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers of Taiwan, of course, are getting richer, but also take care of your people. If you do, we don't care if you're getting richer, if you feel like we're being taken care of.
Right, and then we were talking about, or I was thinking it also applies to political leaders. Like, do we care so much about their extramarital affairs or certain types of scandals if the economy is doing well and the people are well fed and they're, you know, happy? We don't care so much about other stuff as long as, you know, they're doing their job and keeping us happy.
Right. Okay, so that's our 2 cents. But if you want to see what our Facebook Live viewers have been saying, just go to our Facebook Live right now on ICRT Facebook page, and we will do this Real Talk topic again next week, always on Friday, 3 to 3:30. We went over a little bit today.
Oopsie.
Big topic.
Nancy and Philip, thank you so much for joining us. Here's some Fifth Harmony.
Hello, handsome and gorgeous. Thank you for watching our video. If you like more general shenanigans or artist interviews, please make sure you click to the next video, but also make sure you subscribe to us by pressing the bell button down here, because we like to tell you more about fun stuff coming up.